we're going to get going here. I'm not used to standing at a podium. This is really odd for me. I am a massive wanderer around the room when I talk, so I'm going to try hard to stay here for the video. So today's discussion for me is entitled Learner View. I was just going to change it to Learner Spyware, given Michael's talk this morning, but it's really kind of a talk about a combination of things that you saw this morning and some things from yesterday. But one of the problems that we see is this idea of engagement with students that we all kind of talk about as far as whether it's in the class or online and looking at ways that we can engage students. And really, the solution to this, in my opinion, is really looking at what I'll call engagement analytics and starting to meet students where they do things. And what that means is looking at exactly where students are participating in different kinds of learner activities, rather than funneling them into this one particular solution like Canvas. So in other words, the idea is that we're going to send all of our students to one learning management system or Pearson in a box, and that's where all of their learning is going to happen, is quite frankly ridiculous to me. And so the idea is really around telling this digital story about the kinds of things that they're doing, and then looking at the data around the kinds of things that they're doing. And I'll talk a little bit later about the dashboard idea as far as how do we look at this particular data. But kind of looking at what Brian was talking about this morning is really looking at getting data from a lot of different places and creating a persona around what's happening. So again, what you'll hear a lot in higher education and what Penn State's been talking a lot about is student engagement analytics. How many times did a student log into Canvas? Okay, that's nice, but I really don't care. I mean, when you look at retention analysis and you look at these kinds of things about what students are doing, you got to look at everything, and you can't just look at one particular system. And so if you look at the trends, does anybody know what this is called? It's a kind of, yeah, it's a hype cycle. So if you don't know what a hype cycle is, Gartner produces these for all different kinds of technologies as an example. And so the idea here, if you look at the kinds of things that are happening, learner analytics is really at the top of this hype cycle. XAPI, which Brian was talking about this morning, was originally called Tin Can API. And you're seeing that the Tin Can API and the Bluetooth beacons and some of the things I've been working with are really kind of starting off on this trigger. This is from 2016, so the new one's due out just about any time now. But you'll see that the kinds of things in the space that I've been working in is really in line with what we're seeing. The learning model, if you're not familiar with TPAC, if you've not heard or seen TPAC before, it's really a combination of technology, pedagogy, and content knowledge. And the idea around really any learning design model is about the combination of those three things and where they intersect. And the idea of where you really want to find yourself is really in that sweet spot in the middle, which is that combination of those three things. And so we've kind of been talking about the technology and the pedagogy, and you start to look at, okay, where does this content knowledge come from? And the first thing I thought of was, I'm the king of content knowledge, and then of course I thought of Seinfeld. And I'm a firm believer just about everything in life relates to some Seinfeld episode. But if you remember The Wiz, he was kind of like the king of content knowledge, or we think in terms of the fact that the library holds all of this content knowledge. And so I think we're kind of arrogant to think that we're the only people that have this knowledge that students need to access. And so my philosophy is let it go. I have 3 daughters, so I think I have Frozen memorized at this point as a movie. But you got to let it go. You got to quit trying to drive students into one box. You got to quit trying to force them to learn exactly a certain way for a particular course. And so the pieces that I'm going to talk a little bit about here, just to kind of give you this background, is really the foundation of what we call this LRS, this learning record store. And you go back to that persona slide, No, the LRS is not meant to replace the LMS. It is meant to be another piece in this whole kind of persona idea. And Tin Can API or XAPI is really a mechanism to transport your stuff into an LRS. That's like the really quick and dirty version of this. And it really comes down to the fact that we come down to actor, verb, object. You did something with an object, okay? So a learner read a blog post, or a learner did something. And then you can store auxiliary information, you know, whether you passed the particular course or the quiz that we're going to do here in a second. And you can have contextual kinds of data that you store along with that. So again, it's really, if you've kind of heard this idea of micro-credentialing or micro-learning experiences, think of that, and we're going to embody it into this thing called XAPI, and it's really a format to store that, okay? And for those of you who want to see some code, it wouldn't be any kind of an IT slide without some code here. So this is really a way of building basically this action, this XAPI, that we're going to then send on to the LRS. And by the way, I'm going to kind of go through a bunch of examples here in a second, and I'm not going to go into super detail of how I did each one, how I built each one. If you want to talk about that, I'll be here, you know, the next 2 days if you want to get into the under the hood stuff. The infrastructure you can kind of see of what I'm going to show you is really a mix of all of these different kinds of things. And that's kind of my philosophy of building this stuff, is use the tool that fits best for what you're trying to achieve. And you'll see Elms that Brian was talking about earlier. That's a key component of this idea. I know WordPress is up there that some of you don't like, but you know, that's an example that I used because it was a client that I was working with wanted to use it. So again, meet the need of where the activity is happening. Don't shoehorn people into some action that you're trying to get to. If you're interested in setting up your own LRS, Learning Locker is an open source version of an LRS that you can set up on your own. Torrance Learning is a group that does a lot of work in this space. They have cohorts that they run about every 4 months, and you can go in for free and talk with other people that are playing in this space, and they can show you kinds of the stuff that they're doing. And there's other implementations of LRSs. There's Wax and LXI and Watershed. So, okay. So that's kind of the theory side of XAPI and LRS. And I'll take some questions at the end here if you want to kind of understand, like, what's the difference between an LRS and a CMS and all these other MSs and acronyms. But let's get on to some examples. I kind of set this up just because it's a short time period, right? You can kind of jump in and use these examples as I'm doing them, as you wish. What I decided to do was kind of share you a bunch of stuff that I've built. I'm kind of a builder. I don't have quite the level where Brian's in production, right? Brian and his team, you know, they're using this stuff and have been using it for years in production. I've been tinkering around with this, and so I wanted to kind of show you what I've been doing. So this one here, while I'm talking, if you want to jump out and download Physical Web on your phone, you're welcome to do so. I'll explain to you what I used it for, and then you're welcome to kind of jump on. And I'll leave my beacons on here. So this is an example. I actually happened on this by accident. So if you're not familiar with what a beacon is, I'm kind of holding a couple of them up here. A beacon is, you probably heard of iBeacon or Eddystone. These are basically beacons that throw out a packet over Bluetooth that says, hey, I'm here, and here's some information about me. And so what I did was I embedded a URL inside of one of these guides, and it broadcasts out. What ended up happening, if you install that and you browse for one, you'll see my attendance app that I put on here. So it happened by accident. We used to use an LMS called Angel at Penn State, and it had this way that we could take attendance automatically in our class, and you put this, it would generate this pin every day, and you'd show the students the magical pin, and they'd put it in, and it would take their attendance. When we went to Canvas, we lost that magical feature, and I was like, I'm just going to write my own attendance. And sure enough, I'm like, well, I was kind of working on IoT stuff and LRS stuff at the same time. So I just wrote my own. And I embedded this URL inside the beacon, and what it does is it prompts the student, and you got to be within close proximity of this thing. And in a nutshell, what it does is it cuts an LRS XAPI record. Okay. Now, if a student, you're thinking, well, they could just give. If a student is ambitious enough to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning to walk by my room to catch my beacon, to then go back to bed and still get attendance, they can have credit for coming up to get out of bed that early to come and get attendance. So this stuff is not fail-safe. This is meant to be kind of an immersion in meeting them where they're at. So yeah, this isn't meant to do that. Jigger and I were just talking about this earlier. If you want to tie in an activity to find out what are people doing in Slack, you can create what's called a slash command in Slack and issue an XAPI statement based off of Slack activity. I looked at GroupMe as well, and it's a little their development kit's a little more closed, but I looked at that as well. So again, I'm not going to demo this, but you can issue Slack commands that'll track the kinds of things that are happening inside of Slack. You're like, well, why would I ever want to know like what's happening inside of Slack? When you go to talk to students, I learn a lot about what's happening in the tech world, quite frankly, just from talking to my students. And I'm like, what are you guys using? They're like, well, I use GroupMe. So I kind of go where they're at. I find out what they're using. And if we wanted to find out what's going on, again, spyware-wise, as my dad would say, if we want to kind of find out what's happening, let's go where they're at and see what's happening. This one here is actually, I blatantly stole this from Elms, and this is actually an embedded H5P video. And H5P works directly with Drupal, and what this is they have a number of interactive kinds of objects that you can embed within Drupal. And this is an example where you can embed a video with a quiz inside of Elms, and it will trigger XAPI statements based on what you do with that quiz, whether you started the quiz, what you answered, and all that stuff. So this one's really cool from the standpoint that you can track exactly what's happening inside of this. And I know what you're thinking. My Xware, whatever your Xware is, right, it already does this. It already tells me when people watch a video or skip a video, and it has all this. So what's the advantage, do you think, of this? Like, what's this over Xware, fill in the blank, that already does tracking video and all that other stuff? Like, what do you think? Why would you care to even consider something like this over the millions of video products out there that already give you statistics?
You can get grades up.
What's that?
You can get grades up.
Okay, so you could get grades out of, but I can do that with Pearson, right? I'll play devil's advocate. I could do that with Pearson, right? Yeah.
Is it interoperability?
Yeah. So if I have to go to Pearson to make a video, to have my students log in, to be able to track what they're doing, I got to go to that box, right? I got to go to the Pearson box in order to get that data. That's the cool thing about this and all this other stuff I'm showing you, is that that data then becomes available in your LRS. You can look at all the cross-section of data. I keep picking on Pearson, but they're a big target we can pick on. Rather than sending the student to the box, let's look at all the boxes. Okay. So this one directly ties into exactly what's happening with blogging and badging and what we talked about. I'm going to go forward and then I'm going to come back to this slide. While I'm talking, you're welcome to do this. This is a WordPress site that I threw up real quickly. And again, I use WordPress because somebody I was working with was already using WordPress. So again, meet them where they're already at. I'm going to use WordPress because this particular set of students, this was for a K-12 solution. This was at a middle and a high school down in York, Pennsylvania, and they wanted a way to track, to find out what's happening inside of their activity. So, and I'll talk a little bit about what's happening here. Why don't people like to use blogs in a large class? do you think? Why don't people like to use blogging in a class of 200, let's just say?
It's too much to read.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to read, right? Because you feel that you have to be compelled to read every single blog post and to be able to understand everything that's happening inside of that. I'm not saying that people don't use blogging, but I'm saying that there's typically a barrier to using blogging. And so what I developed for these guys was I said, look, I'm not saying you shouldn't go through and read all your blogs, but why don't we set it up so that we understand what students are thinking about their blogs and how they're tagging their blogs. So in a nutshell, what I did was I created categories that you'll see in the middle here, and as students self-selected these categories, they understood what content their particular blog post related to. And then I cut XAPI statements based off of what particular categories they chose, right? So if you jump over here, you can, let me see, where's my, so if you look down here, I created this for today. You can pick different categories for a particular blog post. So if you write a blog post, a student can you can self-select which of these categories that you want to be able to have your blog post associated to. And then what's interesting then, I'm not saying, again, you shouldn't go through and read the blog post, but that you can say, let's look at the analytics based on what students self-selected about their blog post. So you can get this metadata about what's happening with a blog post. We also tied in some badging. We used a badge snap-in for WordPress, and it also tracked their blogging according to badging as well. So it was like a dual purpose idea that we did with that. So that was pretty cool. We get to our wonderful Alexa here, and she probably see it, she didn't pick up. So the first thing I did with Alexa, this again, there she goes, kind of happened on accident. My nephew had one of these, and I was like, yeah, whatever. I mean, it was kind of a old toy kind of thing. And Black Friday or Cyber Monday, they went on sale for like $40, and I'm like, I'm not going to buy one. So I kind of got it from the standpoint of I just wanted to see kind of what I could do with it. And it was right around the time when I found the H5P video quiz idea from what Alex was doing. And I started looking at ways that I could trigger XAPI statements directly from Alexa, being a voice-activated kind of application. This one, has any ever used this? I mean, raise your hand if you use it for this.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
That's okay. This is really cool. If you've not seen this yet, this is a really cool way to link your app to other kinds of triggers. It's really a trigger kind of gateway, trigger middleware that you say, if you're going to do this, then it triggers some other actual piece of software, which is really cool. So I started off doing that, and that led me into this guy here, which was the ability to create a quiz with her that allowed me to then generate XAPI statements based on that particular interaction. So it became a voice-activated quiz kind of journey that I wanted to go on. Let me just stop there. Some people say, well, how does this compare to like the Google Home solution? What I can say from my personal experience was the SDK for this device was way more open than the Google Home. And maybe you can dispute me on that at the break, but what I found was all of this stuff was free and widely available for developing this, okay? So I'd like a volunteer to come up that thinks they know Star Wars. Come up and take a Star Wars quiz. All right, come on up, Doug. Let me just get this guy ready. Do I have to sit? Nope. Sure. Okay, let me refresh this. Oh, somebody. All right, someone. So real quickly before we do the quiz, you'll see that 2 people did my Beacon app. Yeah, very cool. So we got 2 people that went into the Beacon app, and basically you'll see that what it did was it triggered a particular XAPI statement that those 2 people attended this VLE 110 that I made up. Okay. So I'll get to the data part here in a second, but this is a snapshot into Learning Locker, which is a summary of XAPI statements. Okay, so you're going to say this, and we're going to see if you can follow the directions. Okay. Go ahead. I'm going to ask her this.
Oh.
Right? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Alexa, ask Tin Can Quiz.
I will ask you 2 questions. Try to get as many right as you can. Just say the number of the answer. Let's begin. Question 1. Who bought the Star Wars franchise? 1. Microsoft. 2. Disney.
Disney. Oh, 2. 2.
That answer is correct. Your score is 1. Question 2. Who did Han fight with? 1. Darth Vader. 2. Greedo.
2.
That answer is correct. You got 2 out of 2 questions correct. Thank you for playing.
Awesome. Good job.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. Yeah, good job.
Question.
Yeah.
Do you know who shot first? Super kick.
I don't know. I should have asked that question. Who shot first, right? I should add that to the question back. So what you'll see here is, here's the cool part. I mean, there's a novelty factor in this, right? But I think the cool part is that we triggered at different stages of the game what happened in the interaction of the student activity of what happened with him and Alexa. And you'll see that quiz dude, which is, I embedded that in, that's the name of Doug. Doug's not quiz dude. So quiz dude initiated the quiz. It tells you whether or not they passed a particular question or failed a particular question. And then it tells you based on some logic, I think I made it that you had to have an 80% to pass. And so based on that logic, it'll cut an XAPI record that passed or failed. So again, the advantage of this over maybe some other tools that you see is this, you go to where people are at, right? And so that's kind of the whole theory, in my opinion, about XAPI, is that you put hooks into learning activities, whether it's Slack or Alexa or WordPress or fill in the blank, you can put a hook into just about anything. And I kind of hesitate to say that because then there's always that one closed system that you can't get a hook into. But if you can get access to either the code or an API, a decent API, you can trigger a lot of this stuff. Okay, so that was kind of the premise behind that. So I got to tell you a quick story. So do you remember the AWS outage? Amazon outage about 3 months ago. How often does AWS go down? Like, not very often at all, right? It happened exactly when I was doing this presentation down at ISD in University Park. And I'm like asking her, she wasn't responding, and I was like, oh, this is horrible. I'm glad it worked. Okay, so what's next? Reporting. I probably spent more time on reporting this stuff than I have anything. So here's my typical conversation that I have with people. I'm talking to them about XAPI, about learning record stores, and after about 10 minutes, they start like glazing over, and they're like, well, where's your fancy dashboard? Where's your fancy widget dashboard? I'm like, really? That's all you care about is a fancy dashboard? I'm like, all right, I guess I gotta create some fancy dashboards. So that's really what I've been working on a lot lately. And I went through just about every reporting possibility with this stuff. I tied into straight to the Mongo database. I used Click, and I used Tableau, and I used all kinds of BI tools and all this stuff. And then I ended up using some Geek3 libraries like ZingChart. And then I ran into Brian and his crew, and they're like, well, we can do this, and it's a hell of a lot easier. And when a week later, in 6 months compared to 1 week, using these web components that we were talking about here earlier, that Brian was talking about earlier, is really the way that what happened. So real quickly, what you'll see here is these are some this is a web component-based dashboard that has very, very small code footprint, right? super easy to use. The knowledge to get there wasn't easy, obviously, because I didn't know about it. But once I learned it, it was really super easy to understand. And you'll see that this really looks similar to the learning dashboard that they give you with Learning Locker. Okay? So I can generate something that looks a lot better. And what was interesting was I didn't have to sit down and write the code needed to generate a particular chart like this. And I can't emphasize enough how big that is. I don't know if any of you have ever done any programming with D3 for data visualization, but it's pretty painful, okay? It's just a lot of code. It's not, it just takes a lot of time. And a small piece of code, I was able to generate this, really with Michael Potter's help. And so you can get everything from an activity count out to a user by a different count by what happened with and by a particular user, and look at those kinds of things. So that's really where I've been spending most of my time, is getting this dashboard up and running, because again, it's when I have conversations with people, it's always like, where's your dashboard? Where's your fancy dashboard? So I have been spending most of my time in that area. So again, many thanks to Brian and Michael for that. So what I've been doing here recently was I got a group of students to start to look at this from the perspective of how would you guys like to see this XAPI thing being used? And so I put a call out, so to speak, to some students back in the spring, and I said, look, I can't pay anything, I have no money, but I can get you some hands-on experience. Really, most of them didn't know how to code very much, but I said, I'm going to put you together and have you work on this thing over the summer. It's all remote. We meet online every week. And so they have been working on this idea of what do we do with a dashboard-looking student view of these kinds of things. And you'll see I purposefully got students from different areas. We literally just created a data science program at Penn State, just got approved here in the last year, bachelor's degree in data science. So one of the students is from data science, and you can kind of see two from comp eng and computer science. So one of the things that I have been working on is this idea of a bookmarklet. And it's the idea that if you're on a web, we can probably turn this into a web component here. But this is an idea that if you're on a web page or watching a video, you can execute this bookmarklet and say, I watched this video, and it sends a record to LRS, to XAPI, right, via XAPI. They're also working on a visualization of what they think a dashboard would look like from a student perspective, right, the kinds of things that they want to see. And then really, what's next for me? I just met these three people literally. I met Andre about 2 months ago. I met Bob like a week ago, and I met Cheon about a week ago. It's interesting when you get into the world from a research perspective of data analytics. It's fairly new. Yeah. Oh, is that 5 minutes left? Okay, cool. Thanks. So we have this idea that I've been reaching out from a research perspective to find out who else is doing this stuff, and I've been trying to kind of spread my wings to see what other people are doing in this area. Not just building Alexa apps, but okay, what's the research behind what makes up a good dashboard? How do students interact with a particular learning resource and those kinds of things? Two of these people, Andre's already PhD, postdoc. He has already written several papers on XAPI. Bob is really big into XAPI and dashboards, and Cheon is very interested in learning design theory and understanding, again, from a dashboard perspective. She hadn't heard of XAPI or learning record stores yet. I just introduced her to that. She's a visiting scholar here this summer with us in ISD, so I just met these three people. Pretty cool. What's next for me is really starting to look at this in production from a student perspective, getting a production learning record store up. I don't want to just leech off of Brian's stuff all the time. Get a production sandbox up of this so that other people can begin to experiment with this. And then you can build your own XAPI kinds of apps and things. So, that was a short version of what I've been doing, but what questions might you have?
We have time for questions.
Could you explain about the relationship between XAPI and Internet of Things?
Oh, okay. They're actually not related at all. XAPI, well, let me just go the other one. So, Internet of Things is obviously about connectivity of a particular presence of an object to either other objects or a person, right? We all kind of know that. XAPI is a way of triggering and capturing the activity that happens as a result of that interaction, right? So if I come in contact with a beacon, right? If somebody walks out through the hallway out here and they pick up my beacon with their phone, I could send an XAPI record that says that Michael walked past it or whatever, right? So an XAPI is just a record of an activity that happens at a point in time. Does that make sense?
Eventually, the players or the players in that environment should be identified for communications and especially security issues.
So you mean from understanding who's sending the record?
Yeah, who is sending it, and then we need to identify the players.
Sure. Yeah, and actually, I met with a gentleman from the rail engineering program here at Penn State Altoona, and he wanted to use this solution to track people that come on and off of a train. And I said, well, you could do this exactly like this. You could, have beacon presence, but there definitely is a security discussion that needs to happen around this. And there's also privacy and ethical issues as well. And as Michael was leading to that earlier. Yeah.
I am involved in the International Telecommunication Consortium or the Telemanagement Forum. That organization is working with all the telecom and networking service providers, because we have two different groups of categories of networks, like computer networks and telecommunication networks. In the beginning, they were thinking about Internet of Things because all the things around the world would be connected. But these days, they are emphasizing Internet of Everything, IoT. So telecom service providers will deliver commercial services to the users. In that case, we need to think about service management issues such as like accounting, performance, and troubleshooting, all those kind of things. So in that sense, if we think of XAPI, eventually that kind of features should be considered.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you look at IoT traffic predictions, Gartner predicts that 40% of IoT traffic by 2020 will be machine to machine, right? It won't even be us, right? So, I mean, that's going to become part of that, right? So XAPI could be a mechanism to track the kinds of activities that happen between two objects as well.
Coincidentally, like last night, I received the email regarding like open API from Telemanagement Forum. Would you just suggest a pretty good question for discussion regarding open API? It's quite timely that you introduced XAPI.
Right, but this was created by the government, right, XAPI, and Brian, you can jump in here with tin can creation. I mean, it was really created by the government to replace SCORM, right, and it was originally to replace this communication. But it is an open standard. I mean, XAPI is an open standard, and they publish all of the communications around what format things have to be in, right, in order to send a particular statement.
But how about the international kind of interoperability with other countries?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. There is a sister version of this called Caliber that Quite honestly, I just know that it's a sister version of this, that's about all I know. But there is that as an implementation as well. In fact, Penn State is looking at Caliper, but I haven't dug into Caliper.
Caliper is more LMS centric. That's like, this is a course and an activity occurred. XAPI is more that. There's a thing. You are bringing the fact that it's education.
Caliper comes from IMS Global Learning Consortium. Are you guys going to the implementation fest at the end of this month in Alexandria?
I wasn't planning.
Well, they haven't done those in a while, and this is a big one that they're putting on. And XAPI and some of the other advanced distributed learning technologies will be used there. It's probably low cost.
There's more of this, and then we're out of time, there's more of this going on in industry with XAPI, believe it or not, than education. When I first got into this, I was like, everybody in education ought to be using this. And it's more people that want to track employee performance. It's really big in industry with this. So, yeah.
You talked about triggers. Have you done any triggers with XAPI? Sort of the data that you get to trigger certain things based on that data?
Sure, you could write middleware. So in other words, you mean some logic based on what happens and then trigger?
Yeah.
Sure. I've done that with the Alexa app based on his score of whether or not and how many percentages of, the percentage of how his passing grade by questions. I added some middleware in there that then generated a different XAPI statement